Hello guys, welcome to Cisco with Aman Soni, and in this video we are going to learn how to backup and do the restore of a Cisco IOS on the router. Now this is our lecture number 6 guys, and we are going to do the following tasks. Task number 1, we need to configure Cisco router. Create a simple basic config on the Cisco router. Then we are going to connect it to the TFTP server like we did in the last lecture number 5. And as a matter of fact, this task we have today is very similar to our last lecture. In our last lecture, we have taken the backup and restore of the configuration. In this lecture, we are going to take backup and restore of the iOS of the Cisco router, which is stored in the flash. Now, we are going to connect the TFTP server, we are going to check the communication, and we are going to save the iOS which is inside the flash of the router on the TFTP server. And the command guys that we're going to use is copy. We're going to use this command to copy the iOS to the TFTP server. Then we forcefully delete the iOS file from the router which is inside the flash. It is just like formatting a Windows. And then we will reboot the router. When you reboot the router and there is no iOS file in the flash, the router itself will open in the ROMMON mode. Yes, I hope you guys remember the ROMMON mode from our password break lecture. Now, inside the ROMMON mode itself, we are going to use the tftpdnld, or you can say the tftp download command, and we're going to restore the iOS from the TFTP server. And for that we need to set some other parameters that are told to us by the TFTP DNLD command. So without further delay, let's start the lecture. We have the packet tracer. Let's take a Cisco router, zoom in a little, go to end devices and the TFTP server we need, so we will take a server. There are a lot of services on this server, but we are going to use TFTP for now. Let's connect them. Much like before, we need some IPs, so let's give some IP. Let's say 192.168.1.10. The subnet mask guys will be this, the router. The IP, let's take 192.168.1.1. First we need to make them communicate with each other, so we will do that by assigning the IP addresses on both machines and checking by the ping command. Let's go to the TFTP server, go to desktop, IP configuration, and give the IP 192.168.1.10. Now subnet mask IP address are done on the server. Let's go to the router, CLI, just make it full screen. No, we don't want to do the prompt thing. Enable mode and the config mode, the shortcut as always we use the full command guys, configure terminal. Hope you remember that. Now interface, what interface? F0 was 0. You can check in the topology itself. IP address 192.168.1.1. The subnet mask. Now turn on the interface. It is up and running. Both the status and the protocol are up. The state will be up when you do a no shut command. The protocol will be up when you do the proper connectivity using the link and the end device. Now exit out. Let's check the communication. Ping is done guys. I hope you guys have noticed whenever you ping it the very first time, most probably the very first packet will fail. I am going to dedicate a separate chapter on this topic, why your first packet usually fails. Some of you guys might already know the reason behind this secret failure. ARP, Address Resolution Protocol. Now, let's do a basic config. Hostname R1. More than enough. And let's just save the config. copy running config, because whatever you are doing inside the router right now is in the running config, and we want to copy the running config to the startup config. It is done. Now we need to copy the iOS from our router to our TFTP server. Command I told you, copy command. But what is the source and what is the destination, which file? We don't know that. I told you the iOS file is stored inside the flash. So how to look inside the flash? The command is show flash. Quite simple, isn't it? You might have 3 files, 5 files, or more than that. So how in the world you are going to identify the correct iOS file? By looking at the size and by looking at the extension, the .bin file, and it will be usually around 55, 60, 70, 80 MB or something like that. Quite big when compared to the other files. So this is our iOS file. If you delete this file, your router can no longer boot up. So we are going to save this file on our TFTP server. Why did we open this command? Why did we go and went inside the flash to see the file? Because in order to copy this file, you need the name of the file so that you can tell the router to copy this particular file to the TFTP server. So just select the name carefully and just right click, copy the name. Now you have the name of the file that you want to copy to the TFTP server. Copy. Do not give the name, guys. You have to give the location. We want to copy from flash. What is the destination? The destination is TFTP. Again, it is going to ask few basic questions. Okay, we want to copy some file from flash to the TFTP. Which file from the flash? Flash can have a number of files. Right click and paste the file name that you copied. We want to copy this particular file. Okay, put the name and just enter. What is the address or name of the remote host? Meaning, what is the IP address of your TFTP server? 192.168.1.10, because we configure that IP address on the TFTP ourselves. The destination file name. Do you want to save the file as this name, or do you want to give some another? Let's give some other name. iOS.bin, so that we can very easily identify it. Enter, and it is copying the file. It is done. Our 55 MB iOS is copied to the TFTP in 0.364 seconds with this much speed. Now let's hop on to the TFTP server. Left click, services. We just use the TFTP server. Full screen and look it for the file that you copied. Here it is. Your iOS for this particular router is saved very carefully on the TFTP server. Now there are a number of ways you can utilize this iOS file. If somebody deletes the iOS, if somebody or somehow the iOS got corrupted, if you have another router with same series and you want the same iOS on that router, maybe you want to upgrade the iOS, maybe that blank router has no iOS, you want to just put a fresh installation, so you can do that. So there are a number of ways you can utilize this iOS file. We have done a few steps. This we have done. We connected the TFTP, make them communicate, took the backup of the iOS file to the TFTP server. Now we are going to forcefully delete the iOS file from the router and see what happens next. Go to the CLI, just make it full screen. Okay. Oh, I put some wrong command and it start translating. It is doing a domain lookup. Good thing it came. If you want to stop this bloody message, just press Ctrl Shift 6 and it will break. Wait, sometime it took some time. This is a domain lookup. The way to stop this lookup is Ctrl Shift 6, and it might work, it might not. I will tell you a smart way to turn off this lookup. as soon as it stops. So it was a domain lookup. You are going to go to the config mode and you are going to turn the domain lookup so that such mistakes won't interrupt you for a minute or two. Let's wait. It can be quite bad for you if you do some bad command like this. Let's go to the task till then. So we have took the TFTP server, we back up the iOS file, we're going to delete the iOS file. Okay, now you're not going to delete the whole flash, you are going to delete a specific file from the flash. Let me show you. Config T delete. Okay, doesn't work here, no worries, go here, delete flash. This is the command and it runs as you have seen in the enable mode, not in the config. Delete flash. As soon as you do enter, it will ask you what particular file name do you want to erase, because your flash can have a number of files. Just right click, paste this particular file I want to delete, press enter. Are you sure you want to delete this particular file? Yes, we do. It is gone. Show flash. But you can say the file is not here. It's okay, but I am still inside the iOS. It is up and running, no worries. Commands are running right now. So it won't show you the effect unless you reboot or restart the router. That's why the steps. You need to delete the iOS file from the router. The command you have seen, delete flash from the enable mode. Then you need to reboot the router. Either you can do it manually by going to the physical, turn it off, or you can just give the command reload and press enter. Confirm yes. Now guys, look what it is saying. Just take a minute and read it. The boot environment variables need to be set to a bootable image. The parameters are missing. The iOS file from the flash is missing. The router cannot decompress the file, cannot load the file. That's why we end up inside the ROMMON mode. Now, only one command you need to remember in the ROMMON mode that can save you right now. The command is tftpdnld. Just press enter. It won't do the restoration right away, but it will tell you what variables are required to do the restoration of the iOS from TFTP. Read these parameters. These are the parameters that you need to set, because right now the router don't have any iOS. It is not inside the enable mode. There is no IP addresses, no password, no hostname, nothing. That is why the link when you see is also down, because you are on the ROMMON mode, not in the normal mode guys. Now what you will do, you will set the parameters one by one. So I'm going to tell you a smart way of setting up the parameters. Open a blank notepad file and copy these parameters that you have seen here, all of them. Just copy and paste to the blank notepad. Now guys, what we need to do, we need to set this. So you need to set the IP address. What IP address? It is saying the IP address for this particular unit. The IP address for what? The routers don't have the IP addresses, do they? Actually, in reality, interfaces have the IP address, not your routers. So, this IP address is for what interface? Tell me. It is a confusing point for students in CCNA and CCNP as well. That when they go inside ROMMON mode, TFTPDNLD, the first parameter IP address. IP address of what? You can say it is the IP address of the interface that I connected, or some other interface. It can be, but the real answer is this IP address is always the IP address of a specific interface, which is the very first interface of a router and which is interface F0 by 0. And as a coincident, in our topology, the interface we are using is F0 by 0. But remember, Even if you connect to F10 or F02 or any other interface, this interface will always be the one who is going to get the IP address you are going to put here. Why? Because it is the very first interface. It have to be interface F0 by 0. So in real device or on packet tracer, if you connect the link on some other interface, the practical will not work. It will fail. The restoration will not happen. So what is the IP address you need on interface F0 by 0? We need some IP. So you will delete this and you will put an equal to and just put the IP address very carefully. We need this IP address to assign to our interface F0 by 0. Why? Because right now there is no IP address, no config, no enable mode, nothing. The subnet mask. Rest are quite easy. 255.255.255.0. Default gateway. What is the default gateway you need? You might say my TFTP server, but the answer is not that. Both of the devices are inside the same network. So practically you do not need any default gateway. Maybe in some other scenario when you have 2 3 4 networks and your TFTP server is not in your network, then you need to give some proper default gateway. In this case you can give any IP you desire. You can even give 1.2.3.4. It will work, but remember, do not leave it blank. Now TFTP server, meaning the IP address of the TFTP server. And guys, when you are making the changes, be very careful because Roman mode is case sensitive. 192.168.1.10. This is the IP address of our TFTP server. Now, what file you need to copy from the TFTP? Can be a number of files, can be a number of iOS there, can be a number of configs. We need one particular file which is ios.bin because we put it there ourselves. Now, all the parameters are set and sadly you cannot copy paste them to the router at once. You can't do that simultaneously. You have to select each parameter and copy it. Right click, copy. Go to the CLI, the Roman mode we are in, and just right click and paste. Enter. Done. No error message means done. Go to the notepad. The second parameter. Yes, it is little boring, but you have to be very careful because it is not like your enable mode, not as forgiving. You have to be very careful. It is case sensitive. Right click, paste. Default gateway is done. TFTP server. Although you can give as many space you want, guys. Done with the IP of the TFTP server, the file name, and with the last parameter. Now you have successfully set all the parameters required by TFTP DNLD. Now what you are going to do? The same command. Actually guys, this is the trick. This is the real command that you need to download from TFTP, but previously it was not working because you didn't have the parameters. Now you have the parameters. Let's see what happens. TFTP DNLD. It is saying all the parameters I need are set. Do you wish to continue? Yes. The partitions of the flash will be lost. It will erase it and it will install the fresh file. Yes, we want that, and enter. It will copy that, it will erase the flash and it will do the installation. On real device, this whole process after pressing Y can take around 10 to 20 minutes even. It is packet tracer, that is why it is so smooth. Maybe I'll make another video when I get my hands on a real router. I can borrow one from my friend and I can make the tutorial for you guys. If you want, do put in comments. I will make the same video on a real Cisco device so that you can see the time and the duration difference. Anything for my students. Now we want to reset the router. How? The command is reset. Just press enter and it will start decompressing the image because you have the iOS file right now. You just did a successful restoration. It will take some time and it will be done. Your iOS is back and running. The same config is working because you deleted the iOS, guys. You didn't deleted the config, it was already there. So don't forget to practice the practical, and especially for this practical, do practice on the real device and also on the packet tracer. So hope you guys enjoyed the video as much as I do making it. So see you in the next lecture. Love you all. Take care. Aman Soni signing out.